Today's video is going to be on cleaning up your price codes file. There are a number of things that you can do. We're going to talk about those things that you want to keep in your price codes file, records that are current or not verified, those that you have inventory, and those that you have samples of. And there's a reason why you want to know which ones you have the samples of. It's not necessarily that you need to keep them, but it's going to help in the long run. The things that you want to remove are those that are from businesses that are no longer available anymore. You might have some duplicate names in your database, and you might have some duplicate records in there as well. So we're going to take a look at those, and we're going to make sure that we know how to clean up everything that's in here. Okay, I'm going to move into FrameReady now, and let's go into our program. So starting out with the discontinued items, I'm going to go to the price codes file, and in the price codes file, you're going to see that any record that we have in here has three different statuses for it. It will either be current, not verified, or discontinued. If it's current, that means that the supplier says that it's available. And what FrameReady does is when you do a vendor update, it's going to check the item number. And if it matches the item number from the website that they've given us to your copy of FrameReady, then it's going to stay current. The only thing that it will update in FrameReady is the wholesale cost. All right, so it's not going to change the description field or the UPC field on the current records you have, or the markups or anything else, or even the category field. And this is going to be important later because we're going to talk about identifying corner samples. Over on the right-hand side again, if it does not match up, then what will happen is that we're going to mark it as not verified. And that's really important that we have this second step in between the discontinued, because what's happened in the past is that sometimes the suppliers will change their item number, so it may say 49-01, in which case, according to the computer, 49-01 is not the same as 4901, two entirely different records. So the computer is going to mark this and say that it is not verified. And then once it does that, you would need to check to say, is this really not verified? If it's something that's brand new and it seems suspicious, then definitely check with the supplier, check with us. That's how we find out that if they have changed their numbers or they've added some things in that shouldn't have been added in, and then remove them again. The third setting is discontinued. And when something is marked as discontinued, that gives us the ability to erase all of them, delete them right away. We used to automatically go from current to discontinued. We now have a secondary stage that gives us a little bit of a buffer and lets us manage things a little bit better. For your inventory, this is another important part. There are two ways that you can manage your inventory. You can either use the auto inventory, in which case you're going to put in a whole number that I have 10 mats in stock, and that's it. And as they're used, it will take out either a quarter sheet, half sheet, or full sheet. Or you can use the manual inventory, in which case you're going to say, I have one piece of 16 by 20. Okay, and I might have two pieces of 8 by 10, and then it will keep track of what the total is that you have in your inventory. Now, you do not want to use the auto inventory and the manual inventory together. You want to choose one of these or the other one, okay? One of them or the other one. But what's really important here is the location field. The location field is where you can identify if you have the item in stock, or if you have the item as a sample, then where the sample is possibly located. You could use that as well. This field will appear the same on either location. The very first field for the location, okay, is the same as what is appearing on the auto inventory screen. Identifying your samples, so as I said, you can use the location field for that, but the most important thing that you want to do is up in the top right-hand corner, you want to mark this saying that you have this mat board sample, or you have this molding sample, or you have the fabric sample. So when you're doing a find in FrameReady, you'll see that all of those are listed in there. Molding, mat board, mat design, mat fabric, and mounting samples are available. So that if you wanted to find all of the mat board samples that you have, you can simply mark the box and locate them. Now, as I was saying, you want to identify where that sample is. So if you're not using this for your inventory location, you could put the sample in there. However, if you are using it for the inventory location, another place where you can put the sample is in the description field. And the description field can be used for another number of things. So if I said this was sample and it's in number 12 on the rack or in the bin or wherever it is. And also, see, I'd written in here that I only have 5 only of these left. There's 5 only available in total. But other people have written things in the description box as well, such as 2-week turnaround for molding, anything that gives you a flag. So when it comes up on the work order screen, you know that it's going to take longer for this molding to come in, or any of that. Going on to the other place, if you don't want to put it into the description field, then you could also put it in underneath the image tab to say sample bin number 12, row number 12, in with the linens, wherever you want to identify it, on the wall, west wall, 12th row, that sort of thing. So those are the 3 locations. There are some drawbacks with the image one, storing it in the image. This is not going to print out anywhere. You won't be able to see it. However, this does print out, and this location field does print out in the 2 documents I'm going to show you. So take note of that and decide which one you want to use. Now, removing things. One of the things we would want to do is remove any of the vendors that are no longer in business. And I meant to set this up and put one of them in here, and I haven't done that yet. But when you click on the Find button and you go into the supplier drop-down list, you may see companies in there like Artorama or companies that have been out of business for a long time. And you may decide, I want to remove that company from my listing here, and decide that, yep, it's time for them to go. The easiest way to do that is to simply find them, and I'm just trying to think who I might want to get rid of right now. I'm going to get rid of my Imperial Frames one. Perform find, and then there would be that list of those items that I don't want anymore. Okay. But before I do this, I want to check some things on them. If this is a supplier that's been out of business for years and years and years, chances are you don't have any inventory, so you can just get rid of it, and that's fine. If it is a supplier that you do have some inventory still and you want to keep those items, then you're going to follow through with the next steps on how to do that. But let's assume, first of all, it's out of stock, has been out of stock, and the easiest thing is just to get rid of it. So what I want to do is I want to find all of the discontinued items, because that's the easiest way to remove groups of items from your database. So I'm going to say find anything that has a validation of discontinued. So perform find. There are a number of records in here that do. So if I want to remove these and remove all of them all at once, there are 269 items in here, then what I would do is I would click on the button up here that says delete all discontinued items. And it's going to come up and ask me, do you want to delete all 269 records in the current bound set? And I'm going to say delete all. All right, and I'm not really going to do that because a lot of people call me up and ask me if this is discontinued or not. So I'm going to leave those in there for now. But what I could do is go back and unflag them and say, no, I'm going to change them back to not verified instead of flagging them as discontinued. But for those other items that I do want to get rid of, once I've cleaned out my discontinued and I don't have anything else marked as discontinued, then I can find those out of stock suppliers, the people we don't care anymore, find them, flag them as discontinued, and it'll ask you, do you want to change the validation field in the 2 records, and it'll tell you how many there are, and it matches the number at the top of the screen. And I'm going to say yes, and now they're marked as discontinued. So that when I do click the button that says delete all discontinued, it's deleting not just these 2 records, it's deleting all of them. Okay? So when I click on delete all discontinued, now it's asking 271 records that are going to be deleted. And then you would click delete all if that's what you want to do. But let me go back to those 2 records from the find, and we'll take a look at those in just a moment. The other thing that people have in their database sometimes is that they will have maybe 2 records for Nielsen, or you might have two records, for Engelson, because one is spelled with an EN and the other one is spelled with an ON, or you might have two records for Nielsen, and the reason for that is that one of them has a space behind them and the other one doesn't. So you'll want to do a find for the record with a space, and the same thing with this, you want to find the one that's incorrectly spelled, perform find, and I just put this one in as an example, but you would have a list of those items and then you can delete them. If you do have the two things to keep track of, if you have it marked as a molding sample or if you have inventory on it, then you don't want to delete it right away. And we're going to cover how to safely remove items and keep the ones that you want to keep, remove the ones you want to remove. So if you do have something from Engelson and there isn't a molding sample and there isn't a location field, then go ahead and in that list view, again, you can flag as discontinued and then delete all discontinued. With the case of the Nielsen one, and I'm just going to change this to show you what would happen then. So it was Nielsen and there was a space at the end of it. So now if I go back to my find list, I'm going to find two of them in there. They both look exactly the same in this list, so I don't know which one has the space. So what I want to do is I want to select one of them, and if I click and place my cursor in that box, that field, it shows me that there isn't a space here. So I want to add in the space. So I'm going to put in Nielsen, Nielsen, and then I'm going to go to the end of it and put a space. But if I do that, it's going to find both of them. So what I want to do is I want to use one of the operators. And the operators are up here at the top. So I say it has to exactly match the entire field. So I want to place two equal signs in front of Nielsen space. And when I do that and I click perform find, now it finds just the record or records that has the space in it. Once I remove that space from there, now, when I click on the drop-down list, there's only one. I have to commit the record first. Okay, click outside the box. Now there's only one Nielsen in the list. So that cleans up any duplicates that you have in there. The other duplicate that you may find is, and I'm just going to try this because A4. Or some people I found have duplicates of Artique on their list. So if they were to find Artique, and you'll know you have a duplicate because what happens is you go into the work order screen, and when you go to enter in a map board and you type one in, A4-04, okay, it's going to say there are two of them and they look exactly the same. So if you find that that's happening, you want to remove the duplicates. So we want to go back to the price codes file. And in the price codes file, we're going to find the list of duplicates. Now, I tried to set this up on purpose and FrameReady won't let me because it knows if it's a duplicate, but somehow these duplicates get in there. So I had to put a space in there in order to make that happen. For you to be able to find these, what you want to do, see the item number already exists. Okay, so I can't, I have to leave it with the space behind it. Change the item, yes. Okay, good. So if you want to find the duplicates, what you need to do is you need to click on the find button, and in the item field, use the operators. And if you click on the operators, it says, do you want to find duplicates? And you're going to click yes. It's going to put an exclamation mark in that field. And you can use that in any field that you want, but the item number is the most important one. And when I click perform find, it would normally find all of the Artique items that are in there twice. In my case, I don't have any that are in there twice because it won't let me add a duplicate. So I created these two records just to show you what you can do. If you wind up with a whole list of all the Artique and you don't track inventory and you haven't marked the map board sample, then remove them. The fastest, easiest way to remove a vendor is to go back to the main menu, and in the update vendor pricing, on the right-hand side is the remove button. So that if I wanted to remove all of the Artique items, I would simply click on the remove button and it would just remove them. So you can do that if you want to, and it's probably the easiest way to do it. Any of the suppliers that are really old and outdated will not be on that list. That's why I showed you the other way to remove them, using the discontinued button. flag them as discontinued, and then delete all the discontinueds. If you do have a listing and it's just a handful of them, what you can do is just mark the record and then do a find for all the marked records, and then flag those as discontinued and then delete all of them. Or if it's just one record that's there, you can use the delete record button to remove it. And I am going to remove that second one. So that's the way to get rid of those. Now, one of the things that you want to do, though, is you want to keep all the records that you have that are discontinued or not verified, right? And possibly discontinued, most likely discontinued, but you have a Mapboard sample or you have the inventory of them. So that's the next thing that we're going to take a look at. And we're going to take a look at two ways of doing this. One is that when you go through the, after doing the vendor updates, what's the smoothest process to work on? So just before we do that, Chrissy, I'm going to go to let you run one of our first poll, and if there are any questions, then I can answer them at that time.
Okay, sounds good. So our first poll, how many molding board suppliers do you use?
And then once people have answered the poll, then we'll close it and then we'll go back into the webinar. And Chrissy gets to show us the results.
Yes, and here they are.
There we go. Excellent. Okay. So it's interesting. I do know people that do have 35 vendors that they've installed in FrameReady. The optimal number that I was always told was about 8 to 10. And what the recommendation was that if you do have way too many vendors up on your wall, you're decreasing your buying power. So if you do decide that these are the vendors I really want to focus on, and I want to remove one of the other vendors from my wall because maybe it's not selling as well, then you can go back to the vendors that you do want to keep and say, okay, look, I'm willing to give up this wall space and take these off. What can you do for me? Can I get better discounts? Can I get free shipping? You know, but I'm be willing to take this other supplier off in order to put your new samples up or give you more space on my wall to sell. So, and it's really difficult to do that if you have 35 vendors. A lot of you probably haven't cleaned out the files that you have already. So what you would want to do in order to do that, and I recommend doing it per vendor. So we're going to go through them one at a time. So I might want to decide on one of my vendors, and I think I was going to use Nielsen as my example, and say I want to find all of the records that are not verified and have not been available since, and that's the 3 periods, anything prior to the date of 2019. So that would mean everything that's 2018, 17, 16, 15, etc. And with those 3 things, not verified, validation date, and the supplier name, I'm going to click Perform Find, and it's going to locate all of the dead wood, basically, that I can't sell right now because it's not available anymore. So I won't be able to get any more of this. The other thing I can do now is over on the right-hand side, click on Validation Date. This is going to sort the records that are all not verified. And if I go up to the top left corner and click on the yellow arrow farthest to the left, it takes me up to the oldest record that I have for Nielsen, and that's back in 2011. This item was discontinued. Okay, if I go down to the bottom of the list, clicking the yellow arrow farthest to the right, it shows me that this one was just recently discontinued in 2019. So that shows you the list that I have. There are 249 records in here that I can't sell, that are of no use to me. However, there may be items in there that I have a sample of, and I want to get rid of that sample and pull it off. Or I may have some inventory for that item, so I might want to keep that as well. So here's the next find that you're going to do then. You're going to click on the Find button, and you're going to say, yes, I want all the discontinued items, and I want to know which ones were discontinued prior to 2019. And I'm only looking at the Nielsen frames right now with this example. And I want to go into the quantity field, and I want to know that there's something in the quantity field. Now, I could enter the asterisk in there, but that would also give me negative numbers, and I really don't care if there's negative numbers in there. So I want to know anything greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, that means that I have something in stock on that item still. So I'm going to click Perform Find, and it's found 1 item. If it had more than 1 record, it would show you a list view of all of those not verified items that we have in here. So I'm going to go back to the form view, And the other thing it's showing me is that I have the sample of this item. So if I wanted to print out a listing of this, or I want to look at it, the easiest way to do that is to go to the inventory list button on the right-hand side on the form view. When I click on inventory list, it shows me a listing where I can see all of the items in a row. And if I've entered in the sample in the location field, and I didn't even have any inventory in here, now I have a list that I can print out and I can see everything at a glance. And I'm just going to go to that printed list. So this is what it would look like. It would give you the item number on the left-hand side. It has the description here. So even if you didn't enter in the sample location over on the right-hand side, if you added it in prior to in front of the description, then you would, or at the end of the description if it's not too long, then you would know exactly where it is. You now have a printed list that you can take over to the wall and pull that sample. Of course, if you have inventory in there though, you don't want to pull that sample. So that's why you may want to have two different lists that you print out. Or if you do print out the one list, just identify the items that you don't want to pull the sample, because once you pull the sample, then you're not going to be selling that bit of inventory that you have. One of the tips somebody told me was that if you have those items that you have a little bit left in inventory, put them in a special place on the wall so that you know that this is limited stock. And you don't have to put them on sale, it's just limited stock, and it might sell them faster, but it lets you know that I don't have too much of this, I'm going to check. Of course, anytime that you're selling one of these items, and we'll go to the work order screen, and I'll just go to, actually maybe we'll just make a new one up. Might be easier that way, 16 by 20. And I'm going to put that discontinued item in there from Nielsen. Oops. Okay, and there it is. And knowing what I need for this, if I hold my mouse over top of the description, it will tell me that I need 6.5 feet in that tiny little gray sliver in there that's showing, and it has a quantity on hand of 10. If you don't want to hold your mouse over top, to just a quick reference, you can also go and click on the underlined word frame 1. This will also tell you that you have 10 feet in stock, and if you're doing the auto inventory, this is where it will display it. If you're doing the manual inventory, then it will display it in the column on the right. And there's your location. So if that's the location of the molding, the inventory, that's great, or if it's the location of the sample, either one of those you can use. So I'm going to go back to the price codes file now. So you've done a find for those old out-of-date suppliers. Once you've done that, and you're going to find, I know some people who've had 100,000 records in their database, and it just bogs things down because every time you apply your markups to your vendors, it's also applying them to the 270 records that are discontinued for that one supplier. So it's a good idea to weed these out, speed up the program, make things run a little bit smoother. So let's go back to the form view now. We've reviewed that if you want to do a find for just the molding samples, you can. We're going to click find. I want to find all the ones that are not verified, don't even need to have a date in there at all, and I want to know the molding samples. So I'm going to click perform find, and if I want to, like I said, it's always a good idea to do it just for one supplier, simply because if you're trying to do too many of the suppliers all at once, it could be overwhelming. So there are the records that I have that are just the samples. And I know that I have these samples, but they're not verified. So once again, I can go back over to the left-hand side of the screen, click on the inventory list view button, or if you are in the list view here, you can click on the inventory list view button at the top of the screen. And then it will take you to this screen where you can see, and if you've entered in the sample number here or at the beginning of the description, then you can click on the button that says print day to day, and that's going to give you that list. You can sort them out if you want or not sorted, but that's going to give you that list that I showed you earlier, the one down here, okay? And that's what you can print out, and that is the inventory day to day report. I know there was another one up there at the top, and you're probably wondering what the print year end one looks like. So if I was to go back here and show you that one, it's not one that I would use for this, simply because it has a listing of each supplier and it provides a little bit more information. It's going to take up more paper to print. But if you decided you wanted to print that one as well, you could. Like I said, I find the other one to be better. That's more of the tracking the inventory. So what do you do then at the end after doing your vendor update, and how do you keep track of it? And once you've gotten rid of all of the items that you don't need anymore, how do you keep it up to date on a regular basis? And the way to do that is after you've done your vendor update, okay, and it's gone through and it's asked you if you wanted to mark the items as not verified, and you're going to do that. It does ask you if you want, and I'll go to that screen, it does ask you if you want to print out a list of the not verified items. And if you have it preset in your options to not print the list, don't panic about that, because right now I would say that if you don't print out that list, that's okay. If you have a lot of discontinued items in your file already. But if you don't have the discontinued items and you are keeping up to date with them, then printing out that list is okay, and you can mark the circle for yes, as long as you go through and delete them all afterwards. And some people are very diligent about that, and once they've been flagged as discontinued or not verified, they go through, delete them. And if they enter something in on the work order, they know that if it doesn't come up, it's not available and it's gone. So if you want to print out the list of not verified at this time, you can, otherwise bypass it and we'll get to it again. So you've gone through, you've done the vendor update, and it's come up with the flagged items, and we're going to go do that. We're going to say find all of the items from Larson Jewell, and this is what it would show you if you did them one at a time, okay, or even after you just do a find. Okay, so there's your list of items that are not verified. So in our list, we want to print the list to identify what is in inventory and what isn't in inventory. And what we can do is use the omit button on the samples then. So if we were to say find everything from that, and I'm going to leave the supplier field blank simply because I don't have too many discontinueds in there for any one specific supplier. Okay, but I'm going to go up and say that I want to find all the not verified items, okay, and what I want to do is I want to get rid of those that I don't have a sample. So now that I've got my first request in saying I want to find all the not verified items for specifically Larson Jewell or Omega or whoever the company is, the second request I'm going to do is new request, and I'm going to say I want to omit. And at the top of the screen, the include is highlighted, so I'm going to click on omit. And once I've clicked on the omit button, I'm going to say omit all the ones that I have a molding sample for. And then I'm going to go to my next request and say new request, and I want to omit all of the ones that I have a quantity in the field greater than 0. Okay, so that's going to say find everything that is not verified. So I'm going to go back to my requests here. So the very first request is find everything that is not verified, and I'm going to say just for molding. Okay, and the second request is to omit all of the molding samples, and the third request is to omit anything that has a quantity greater than 0. So when I click perform find, now it finds all the items that I know I don't have a sample and I know I don't have any stock. Now it's okay to go back up and say flag these as discontinued, and there are 13,000 records in here right now that I can flag as discontinued, and then I can click on the delete all discontinued items. Now, if you're doing this on a regular basis, then whatever number is up at the top of the screen right now, when you click flag as discontinued, and then you click delete all discontinued, it's going to be the exact same number. But you know that I already have 271 records in there that are discontinued as well, so it's going to add it to that number. So if you are doing it on a regular basis, the number should match. If you aren't and you're accumulating, then it's going to be a higher number when you do flag them as discontinued. And as I said, my recommendation would be to do it for one vendor at a time so you can manage what you're cleaning out and make some decisions. Once you've done that, the only records that are going to be left in your not verified selection is the record, are the records that have the supplier, the sample box marked. Let's go to the form view. The ones that have the sample box marked and the ones that have the inventory. If you are doing this with the manual inventory, then when you're performing that find, you're going to want to go down to the section for the manual inventory. okay? And same thing for the mat board inventory as well. And I would use the total fields rather than something necessarily in the quantity box. So if you're doing this with the manual inventory and we have something greater than 0, okay, and it is not verified, this will give me my molding items, okay, that have been using the manual inventory rather than the automatic inventory. So that's basically the information on that find. Chrissy, do you have any more questions? Let's go ahead and do our next poll.
All right, I'll start the poll. We have a couple questions. Which framing materials do you track inventory? Okay, so I have, if we don't have the sample button checked off, does that affect any of these finds or searches that Carol is talking about?
Yes. So if you don't have the sample box marked, then it's going to find all of your inventory that you have in stock, or omit the inventory that you have in stock. It's just not going to give you the ability to be able to get a list of what samples to pull off the wall. The handout that we have gives you some ideas on how to do that. And one of the best that I heard was somebody saying it was spring cleaning time, and they had one person at the wall who was dusting the sample and calling the number over to somebody who was sitting at the computer. And that person would look it up and they would say, oh, it's not verified and we have no inventory, toss it, don't bother to dust it. Okay, or we do have some inventory of it, but it is discontinued. Let's put a sticker on it, let's put an X on it so we know. So when we pull it up the next time, somebody sees the X on the back or the sticker and says, oh, you know, limited stock, right away they're flagged to know that there might not be enough in stock for this and we can't get any more. So if you can put your market, the other thing is that if you have the samples marked in the program someplace, if you use the location field to do that, or you use the image note tab, then there's a way that we can go in, find everything that has something in that field and mark those boxes for you. Just give us a call and if you have it identified somehow else in the system.
Nice. She says, answered, thank you.
Oh, good.
I'm going to close the poll now and share our results. And I have another question for you once we're done.
Okay. Molding, that word. Okay. Class, mounting products. Okay, yeah, molding is the big one, definitely.
Yes, so I have hovering over the molding field is not verified, showing how much footage is required. Can a similar hover on a valid molding provide the same detail?
Yes, yes, it does. So even, and let me just go back in there, great question. So even if I was to put in a molding in here that is available, and it comes up by holding my mouse over top of the description, it gives me the required footage, 7 feet, quantity on hand, 77.5 feet. So that information is available no matter what, if it's discontinued, not verified, or current, always available.
Great, that's all our questions.
Super, that's great. So other things that you may want to clean out of the program. So everything that I've shown you right now is going to work for you for molding, for mat board, and for fabric, because those are the large quantity items. So when you click on molding, you know how many molding records you have and how many mat board records you have in the program. And those are the majority of them, and fabric as well. But when you get into the smaller ticket items, these items are things that you need to clean out individually. Mat design, I know that there is a mat design sample because we did have samples in Bert's shop. He had the samples there that would show, you know, different designs that you could do. So you might have one there. And if you do want to delete something in here, then I would just simply use the delete record button to say, yeah, we don't do that any longer, and get rid of it. You could also go back to the list view here again. And as I mentioned before, using the marked box, you can mark out the ones that you don't need and you aren't going to be doing any longer. And then you can say, find the marked records. Just make sure that you only found the records that you really wanted to have marked. If you haven't used this before, maybe one of the first things that you should do is click on the unmark all button. All right, are you sure you want to unmark all the records? And I'm going to say yes, so that it removes the check boxes from everything in the price codes file. That way, when you go into the other tabs or the other groups going across the top, you can now go ahead and mark the items that you want to remove. And that way, when you say find the marked records, and it finds just those two, you can flag those as discontinued. Even if they don't have anything in here, it would still work that I could flag those as discontinued, yes. And now I can delete all the discontinued items. So that if you find that you've marked something as discontinued and didn't want it to be discontinued, click on the field for discontinued, click back on the word discontinued, and then hit the backspace key or the delete key. The same as you do on some of the other things, and it will remove it from the list. So each one of these lists that you go through, go ahead and mark the items that you don't want to keep anymore, or if there's only one in the list, then you can click on that item and then use the delete record button in the bottom left-hand corner. So I just also want to mention that if you haven't had a chance to download those two handouts, now would be a good time to do that. One on handling your inventory and the other one on identifying corner samples. Super. So that's really everything that I had on my list that I wanted to cover with you today. I know we're a little less than the full hour. That's a good thing. It gives you a chance to go back and maybe mark some of those corner samples that you have and go ahead and clean out some of the items that you don't need in your program. Big tip for you though, before you do any of that, make sure that you have made a backup of your program. And if you're using the FrameReady 11, one of the easiest ways to make your backup is to say, I want to make a backup onto the desktop. Click on the backup now, and it's going to put a backup on your desktop. And then that way, there we go, it's done. If I wanted to see it, I can go view it, and it's got the backup in there of everything in the FrameReady folder. And I would do that before I start deleting large groups of items. If you don't have the version 11 to make that easy backup, then simply close your FrameReady program, go to wherever it is stored. If it's in it should be in your C drive. In the newer version, it'll be under users. In the older versions of FrameReady, it's under Soft Touch Solutions. But you want to go find your FrameReady folder, make a copy of it, save it onto a USB drive, or that'd be the safest thing in any time. Put it on a USB drive, take it out of your location, put it in your handbag, wallet, pocket, take it home with you, so it's not in the store should something happen to the store or the computer at the store. But then you can go ahead and start deleting those large number of records. If you're uncertain of it at all, certainly give us a call and ask us. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope you found this to be informative and useful for you, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye, everyone.